Hi, I'm Rodney Kite-Powell. I'm the director of the Touchton Map Library here at the Tampa Bay History Center, and this is another episode of From the Collection, Map Edition. People ask all the time, what's my favorite map or what's the most important map in the collection? And while I try not to pick favorites, even though they don't know if I pick a favorite, this certainly is one of them. This is the 1853 John Jackson map of Tampa. Now, it's not the first map that John Jackson ever did of Tampa, not the first map of Tampa. But it is one of the most important. And one of those reasons is if there is any real estate transaction that occurs in what is now downtown Tampa, from Whiting Street up to Harrison, from the river over to East Street, it is this map that's referenced in that real estate transaction. And that's after 167 years have passed. And so it's still a map that, though physically this map isn't used every day, the information on this map is used almost every single day. It's also important because it's a snapshot, so to speak, of what life was like in Tampa just prior to the Civil War, but just after the end of the Second Seminole War. And not only does it show the town of Tampa in 1853, it also shows Fort Brooke. One neat feature of this map is you can really tell how kind of disoriented or how off of a north-south orientation the city's street grid is. And if you look at a map today, you can see downtown is a little bit crooked. And this map shows that. And this map also itself is a little bit crooked. This arrow right here points to where true north would be, which kind of goes off to the upper right. So you'd have to tilt this map on the side to be able to actually see the true north-south version of this. But even when you do that, the streets don't run true north and south. And there are a couple reasons for that. One, John Jackson and Levi Whiting, for whom Whiting Street's named, were the ones who set the boundary between Fort Brooke. Whiting was the commander at Fort Brooke at the time, and Tampa. And that boundary may not have been a true east-west boundary, but also there's a note on the map all the way at the bottom that says that some of the measurements are a little bit off because Jackson's compass was broken. And we actually have the compass in our collection, and it's still broken. We haven't fixed it. Other great features of this map are just the natural environment. You see the Hillsborough River and Hillsborough Bay. You also, if you were to lay this map over a modern map of Tampa and try and match the shorelines up, you wouldn't be able to match the street grid up. And that's because the shoreline has changed quite a bit in the past 167 years, partly through natural circumstances, but almost entirely through man-made reasons. The river has been dredged out a little bit, and so they bulkheaded the river and put in more land along the river, so the river's actually a bit narrower than it used to be. And on the south, there is a channel that was dredged called Garrison Channel, which is where the History Center is. And then the land was also added on the south end of downtown. So the History Center on this map would actually be offshore in the water. This map encompasses what became the city of Tampa in 1855. This was still a community that was very much tied to the water and ships. But in the 1840s, the federal government reduced the size of the fort, partly to allow the town of Tampa to formally exist, even though it had previously kind of informally existed on the same property beginning in the early 1840s. And so that reduced footprint of Fort Brooke is what you see here along Whiting Street, and then kind of in a zigzag going off this way to East Street, and then going out to what is now Ybor City. So the fort was decommissioned by the military and the federal government in 1883. A doctor from Gainesville was able to use his political connections to have this land transferred to the Department of the Interior, where it would be open for homesteading, and people homesteaded this area. 3 African-American families also homesteaded this area, and it became known as the Garrison. And it was became very much tied to the port, particularly after the channels were dredged in the Hillsborough River around the turn of the century. And so it wasn't until things started to be built in and around where the fort was that the fort began to be rediscovered. And so in 1980, right here at Whiting and Franklin Street, which is not interestingly noted on this map, a cemetery that was related to the fort was found. Almost all of the street names that you see on this map are the same as the street names that are in downtown Tampa today, with a couple of exceptions. The first street to change names was Monroe, and you see that right here, and that is now Florida Avenue. Another street name change is Lafayette Street. and that's now Kennedy Boulevard. And that street name changed shortly after the assassination of President Kennedy in November of 1963. One more street that's important to us, and that's this right here, Water Street. Subsequently to this map being made, Water Street was extended after Fort Brooke was decommissioned and became part of Tampa, and extended down the river and then over across the channel. And the History Center is located on Water Street, and the name Water Street is one of the factors that prompted the Strategic Properties Partnership, the SPP, the folks who are redeveloping so much land around the History Center, to call their whole development Water Street Tampa. All right, and that does it for this episode of From the Collection, Map Edition, and I look forward to seeing you next time.